Okay, everybody, here's what we're going to do for these first few lessons. We are going to talk about how to combine Photoshop and Illustrator to make a file that we can send to the Glowforge CNC Laser to have it engrave and cut out. So I'm going to start in Photoshop where I'm going to do my design, and then I'll take it over to Illustrator where I will create the vector lines that the laser needs to use to basically send the laser head around, sort of like a train. And then we'll show you how to go down to the Glowforge and work with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've already opened up Photoshop. I'm just going to hit Create New and create a new file. This is a logo. It doesn't need to be very big, so 5 inches by 5 inches, that's going to work out fine. The largest that you can do on the laser is 12 inches by 20 inches, so keep that in mind. But if you do that, it could take hours to do. So we're just going to keep it relatively small, 5 by 5, resolution 150, that'll be fine. No higher than 300 on the resolution. And really with the laser, you're not going to get a high resolution anyway, so 150 might even be a little bit higher than I need it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create my new file. The first thing that I want to do is I want to do something with the Cape Fear Academy logo. And so I want to bring that logo in. And so from here, all I have to do is I can go to File and Place Embedded. And that way, if I do it embedded as opposed to place linked, if I do place linked, it's just going to put the file in there, but it's not going to save the file with the Photoshop document itself. It's just going to save the location. So if I have to put this on a flash drive or something like that, the logo won't come with me. Whereas if I do embedded, the logo will. So I'll do that. I have this logo folder, so I'm just going to grab this CFA shield and press place. And you can see that it's going to bring the shield in. I'm going to resize this, make it a little bit smaller by clicking on one of the corners and dragging it down to the middle. And then I'm going to center this up by moving it until I see those purple lines there. And now I know it's in the middle of the page, so I'm going to hit the check. And if I need to resize this later, I certainly can. Now what I want to do is I want to put a circle around this. So I'm going to go ahead and grab to the circle tool. Your tool might show something else. So remember, if you hold on the left button while over the tool, you can get some different choices. So I'm going to go to the ellipse tool here. All right. And I'm going to kind of go in the middle here. Now, if I draw this out, I can draw an oval, but let's say that I wanted a perfect circle. What I can do is hold the Shift button down and click and drag, and now notice that while I'm holding the Shift button down, I can get a perfect circle. The width and the height are the exact same. So I'll get a circle like that. Now, I don't want this to be filled in, so I can do one of two things. I can either come up to the top here or over to the side here, and then just click on this fill and say, don't do a fill. But I do want a stroke, so I'm going to add a color to the stroke, just a black like that at 1 pixel should be just fine. And so now I've got my circle. All right, I want to add a second circle. So again, I'm going to, move that back. I'm going to click down here and I can create a new layer. So I'm going to click here to create my new layer. All right, and then I'm going to go back to my circle tool and sort of in the middle, holding down Shift, drag out my circle, and I've got my second circle like that. Okay. Again, I do not want this filled, so I'm going to click on the blue here, and I'm going to say don't do anything there, but I am going to click on the stroke and say put a 1 pixel stroke around the outside. So now I've got this ring around the logo, and I do want that filled in, but you can see that it's two separate layers. So if I were to come over to the flood fill, which lets me fill an entire region, and I click on that, it's going to flood fill on this color here. So if I were to do that, it's not even letting me do that. You can see it has to say rasterized. So again, these are vector lines right now. In order to manipulate them with some of these tools, I have to rasterize these layers. And actually, I'm going to have to merge them as well. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. To rasterize, I just right-click over in the layer window. And you can see that up here it says rasterize layer. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that for the second ellipse as well. I'm just going to click on that layer, right-click over to the right of it, come up here to rasterize layer. And now you'll see that if I go to the flood fill, it's going to be able to flood fill, but it did this whole thing. That's not what I'm looking for it to do. I want to do just inside here, which means I have to have these two layers merged into one. So to do that, I'm going to select ellipse 1 here, hold down Shift, and select ellipse 2. Now you can see that both of these are selected. I can now right-click on them, and I can say merge these layers. And now you see they've merged into one layer, and when I use my paint bucket, I now have the ability to kind of fill in there just like that, okay? So now that I've got this circle, what I want to do is kind of put this rectangular banner up at the top and down here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my drawing tools here, click and hold, and get to my rectangle tool. And right now it's going to fill in this blue, this light blue, and not have a stroke. I want to fill in the dark blue, so I'm going to click on this, and that's the recently used color. I can click on that, or if I knew that I wanted to sample this color here, I could click on this rainbow. But see, notice how this is now an eyedropper. I can click on that blue and notice that it changes that blue, or I could click on that gold and I can make it the CFA gold or white or whatever. So I'm going to click on that blue because that's the color blue I want it. Click OK. And then I'm going to draw my rectangle. So I'm just going to draw it just kind of like this. All right. So now I've got my rectangle, but I want the rectangle to kind of bend with the circle a little bit. Now I could drag it out a little bit. I could make it bigger. If I hold down Shift, I can do just one corner as opposed to doing the whole thing. So if I hold down Shift, I can drag it out like that. So if I needed to resize it, I always could. But I want to bend this thing a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Edit, and I'm going to go to Transform, and I'm going to go to Warp. Okay. Now, while we're in Warp, there's a couple of things that I can do. First of all, I can customize my Warp by clicking on one of these handles here, and I can bend things down, right, and change the shape of this to almost any shape that I want. I can really start to go nuts here. But I want it to be a simple bend. So I'm again going to go to Edit, Transform, Warp, and under Warp, I can click on this area right here, and I can say, let's make that an arc, okay? So now that I've got it in an arc, I can click on this center handle here and kind of adjust that arc until it is the shape that I need it to be, until it is the bend that I need it to be. And then I can hit that check and accept that change. And so now I've got to have this arc around the top of it like that. And I can go ahead to my text tool now, and I can add some text. So right now it's going to be a Cambria text, and it's going to be white, which is just what I want. So I'm going to type in "we are," and I need to make that a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to click on the handles and resize this a little bit, drag it out. Okay, and I want to bend this text as well to fit in that arc. So I'm going to click on that text tool, and if I click on this T with an arc underneath it, okay, I can change that to an actual arc, and I down a little bit to really see what's going on. It's a little bit too big that I look at it. But I can tweak the arc here, right? So I can just click on this slider. I can bend it different ways, okay? I can also change the distortion a little bit to give it some really odd shapes, but I don't think I'm going to do that here. I think I'm going to keep the distortion at a 0 because that's pretty much what I want it to look like. The one thing is it's now a little bit too big. So again, I'm just going to click on my Move tool up here. I'm going to drag the edges in just a little bit so that we are fits a little bit better in that arc. Feeling a little bit better about that, okay? So now I want to put the same kind of thing down here at the bottom where it says CFA. It'll say we are CFA. So just repeat the process, right? I'm going to click on my square, draw my square out. I don't need this one to be quite as big because it's just going to say CFA, okay? So kind of move that into the middle-ish. And then again, Edit, Transform, and Warp. I'm going to go to my custom. I'm going to make this an arc, okay? But I'm going to take this arc tool and I'm going to bend it down this time until I get it. That's pretty close right there. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it like that. So I'm going to hit the check to accept that. Same thing with the text. I'm going to bring my text out, come over here. I'm going to type in CFA, all in caps. Definitely need to make that bigger. So I'm going to grab this handle here and drag this out, make that a little bit bigger. Maybe hold down the Shift and actually stretch it a little bit. Maybe not have it quite so high. And then click on the text tool and then go ahead and click on the T with the arc in it. And I am going to arc this as well and bring this down the other way, kind of like this, okay? Notice that in this here, there's also some other shapes, so I could arch it and see if that works any better. I could try to do it as a flag, so it kind of waves, and all of these things you can adjust with the sliders to make different. But I think I'm going to just go ahead and stick with the arc, but just have it be a negative arc with 0 distortion. It kind of bends that CFA a little bit more than I like, but that's just going to have to live with that, I think. So I'm going to bend this a little bit more, hit OK. It's a little bit big. So I'm going to grab my handles and bring that in a little bit and bring that in a little bit just to make it fit a little bit better on that arc, okay? And so now I've got my logo. I'm feeling pretty good about where that is. I'm going to hit the green check just like that. And so for right now, I think I'm going to live with that. I might move the CFA shield down just a little bit so it's like that. And that's the logo that I'm going to put on the laser to print. So in the next video, we'll talk about what to do in Illustrator and kind of move on from there.